a lot outstanding. And good evening. It is Tuesday, March 12th, 2019, 7 p.m. And I will call this meeting of the Stow Board of Selectmen to order. As always, we will begin with public input on any matters not on the agenda. Do I have anybody who wants to say anything on any matters not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none. All right. We'll go to Chairman's comments. Just want to remark that March, or rather April, I guess, is a Lighted Up Blue month. Lighted Up Blue is a worldwide event which takes place every April 2nd. The month of April is meant to raise awareness for autism in communities while lighting buildings and landmarks blue all over the world. This will be Stow's second year of lighting the Stow Community Center building blue, and our third year of having a special event to spread awareness in our community and all of the Nashoba district. The Nashoba Best Buddies will also be at the event. I assume this event is the April 2nd event, and raising money for this special April ball. All right, I don't have anything else. Is anything else? Anything I should have remarked on? I didn't ask. I usually ask you guys. No. All right. Correspondence. Did anybody see anything in the green folder that we? I saw something about the park at 323. Great Road. We should probably add that to the agenda.
I made a note to that.
Kathy is asking us there, in particular, if we want to talk about naming. Okay. So if we could just make that a separate, put that in the line.
I noted it on the
Okay.
minutes, on the correspondence.
Did anybody see anything else? Nothing. Okay, very good. Let's have some minutes. Maureen provided us with several sets of minutes for open session. She provided us with minutes of February 26th and February 19th, and asked that we make some edits. I made some edits, nothing terribly substantial, substantive. I'm happy to have my colleagues take a look at it if they can read my handwriting.
I've looked at them, they're fine with me, but.
Mr. Burke, do you want to? And we don't have to vote them right now. I realize I'm just handing them to you right now. We can, how about we save this till later in the meeting? Maybe just before.
As the chair pleases.
Okay. Well, we have gotten right to the school committee item. And we are pleased to have with us Superintendent Brooke Clenchy of the Nashoba Regional School District for, I think, just an introduction and say hello and a presentation on the budget. Superintendent?
And I'm going to bring Pat Maroney up as well.
I'll see you. Mr. Chair, we do this.
Good to see you.
Nice to meet you again.
Hi, Pat. Good to see you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I apologize, but for the record, and I ask that this be included in the minutes, for reasons I previously explained to you, I will not be participating in this discussion. In order to sustain a quorum, I'll stay here at the desk, but I'll just listen as a citizen. Thank you.
Okay. I'm just going to kind of do a bit of a review with you and kind of explain to how we got here, and then I want to just talk through a couple of salient points, just kind of give you a flavor of where we're at, how we came to be where we're at, and then I want to highlight three components. I want to speak quickly about, which I'll talk in here about the Leachfield oil tank situation that we find.
Before you get, I would just want to say, you haven't appeared before us before, and I
Yeah.
just want to say, welcome aboard.
Oh, thank you.
As I said to you informally, we hear only good things from the town administrator, and that says, and that says a lot about you.
Thank
So I just want to say we're very happy to have you here.
Thank you.
When I first got the materials, I said to myself, oh, only one page? And then I saw the negative number, and I said, she can have as many pages as she wants. It's going to be a negative number. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I did want to officially welcome you
Thank
and
you.
say thank you for appearing here before us.
It's our pleasure, absolutely our pleasure. And Pat Maroney is really, her office is the one that does a lot of the detailed work and such. So I'm just going to talk you through quickly where we got, how we got to where we got. And then I do want to talk about the Leachfield oil tank situation that we're finding ourselves up against. Free full day K, which is hopefully on the horizon, potentially on the horizon. and the SOI, just to kind of update you on those three things. So I can't present anything to you that has not already been presented to our school committee, and our meeting is tomorrow night when we're hoping to find the finalized number. However, I've been in pretty much regular contact with all of our town administrators across the district. They have a very good idea of where we plan to land tomorrow night. But just as with the Board of Selectmen, the school committee may make some decisions that last meeting tomorrow night that we don't see coming, and so some things may change. But I wanna thank too, as I said to you earlier, Chairman Salvi, I think that the town of Stow, I just wanna take half a minute to acknowledge them. As I had said to you earlier, we love working with your police chief, your fire chief. Craig Martin is amazing, and Bill Wrigley is almost always who I go to when I'm looking to spring an idea past somebody or look for some good guidance. He's always my go-to person. And so I'm very, very appreciative of that. And also your FinCom, every year we come to them once or twice a year. They're fabulous to work with, they really are. They ask great questions. Even this year, you think, well, maybe there weren't quite as many questions. Wrong. There were lots of questions. So they're always a terrific group to meet with. So I'm just going to talk through super quickly how we got here. In essence, the school committee tasks us to come up with a general number in December or January. So those two numbers are generally pretty much the same between what we present about mid-December and the workshop in early January. Well, actually, it was later in January. And on that Saturday morning, we go through everything line by line. And I know Mr. Hawks has attended several actually of our FinCom meetings in the past, and he knows how detail-oriented we are in this. School committee does the same thing when they come along. So we came up with our first number, and the first number was, as a school district, was 7.01% increase from last year's budget, and we knew that that was far too high. But we asked each of our principals and each of our leaders of our either units or departments to have a vision of where they're either going to take their building or take their unit in the next year. So we expect them to have a good vision of what that looks like. So when they put everything in, we all know that we'll never get to that first number. We know that right out of the gate, but we have an idea of where they're planning on going. For example, K-5 principals really looking at that literacy program. We're going into year 4 of year 5. That's been ongoing in the continuum, so we know that. Facilities has their own set of priorities. Our nursing unit have their own set of priorities. So when you see that first number, it's not something to scare you off. It just says, if we could have everything that we wanted to take our units or our schools to wherever we want them to go, this is what it would look like. The good news is once we pare it down, we still know what their visions are, we still know where they're headed, and so if we're able to find other efficiencies throughout the course of the year, we try to funnel it back so that they can continue wherever that intent is. The first thing that we took off to start to pare down was, and this was in a lot of collaboration with your town administrators, the leach field and the oil tank situation that we have at the high school. The leach field, this should not be of news to anyone, it has been problematic for years, and it's not been grandfathered in with new regs that have come into play. No matter how we tried, we've worked very closely with DEP. I know that Pat and your team and Rob Frieswick have been very active in that. Bottom line is we have to move the leach field. It's too close to our public water sources, and so it has to be moved. So this year, we set $50,000 aside that we utilize for engineering to shape out what that new leach field would be and the location. Next year, we know that it's going to be approximately $250,000 to do the work to move it forward in that project, and we have to move it forward. But we've also been very clear with DESE, or with the Department of Environmental Protection, that we wouldn't start the work until after July 1st. That makes sense, because that's the new fiscal year. So we know it's gonna be around $250,000, and that's what we've been told. Another issue that we've got at the high school is the oil tank. So in late November, it was just the weekend before our Thanksgiving, the oil tank has also been problematic for many years, and it tends to float. It sits in a cement vault as such. Water tends to seep into it, and it starts to literally float. And it's a 12,000 gallon tank, so it's a big tank. we thought when I first came on board, we knew it was problematic. We thought we had it fixed, we had a plan. They went in and they tried to fix it, but it was just a Band-Aid. And then just before Thanksgiving, it broke loose again, and this time it did other damage. We had just a skiff of oil, so it wasn't a disaster, but it was problematic and it broke other things. So now we have another big project. So in collaboration and communication with our town administrators, we talked about, do we leave this in the budget? It's about $500,000, or do we think that we should pull this out as a standalone and look at borrowing the money against it and taking it over a 10, 15, 20-year period, whatever. So we have been communicating with our financial advisors for the district, saying, what does this look like? So that was the first big chunk of money that came off to start to take away that 7.01% increase. So
What
the,
are your
yeah.
stored assets like? We saw something,
Yeah.
your E and D is
you
like
did
1.2.
1.4, yeah, 1.4 million, that's
1.4
correct,
million.
yes.
And do you have a stabilization fund? That might not be the right terminology.
We have two small stabilization funds, and you're going to see that we will be asking for a third stabilization fund at the upcoming town meeting. Because and that's when I talked about the free full day K, we're gonna want that too. They don't have a lot of money in them, like they don't have
Okay.
$500,000 in them or anything like that. We just created them last year, actually.
Right, it was on the warrants.
Right, it was on the last town meeting last year, a year ago. So, we have one for the turf field, because we know that's coming up as well. So, that will probably be around a $300,000 repair. Not that we need to do it right now, but we're putting money in the bank for that. And then, of course, the other thing was the OPEB, right? And we set up a trust account. And that was a huge deal for us. That was a huge step forward for our school committee.
Sorry,
So at the January, we had our workshop on the 26th. On the January 30th, we took new numbers back to our school committee, and we shaved off 900,000 and change. February 13th meeting, and we showed them all of the areas that we made the cuts from. And at the same time as cuts happen, we also, as time goes on, start to find what our real numbers are coming in on health insurance, or you get a flavor of what it is, or your dental insurance. All those things play a role. So by the February 13th, we had another $1 million off. February 27th was just a smaller one of about 31,000. And so we continued to kind of pick away at it until the last school committee meeting. And at that point in time, we knew that we were getting close to where we wanted to be. And that was, at that point in time, the school district budget was 3.14% over last year's. At that point in time, Bolton was sitting at 4.99%, Lancaster 3.31%, Stow 0.01%. There'll be new numbers that come out tomorrow night. They're not marginally different, but they are a little bit lower. And again, your town manager is well aware of where we're looking at aiming. But keep in mind again that things could change, and the school committee could decide to make other changes, so it would be foolish for us to project that tonight. So I've spoken about the leach field and the oil tank. I want to speak just very quickly about free full day K. Now, K is very different than pre-K, and so I am tonight speaking about but the possibility of free full day K. In essence, and I'll try to wrap this in a snapshot, K can be taken in, and we can receive Chapter 70 money from the state as part of the K-12 spectrum. Pre-K is very different, but K-12 you can do that. And right now, we have never, Nashoba has never charged enough money for that K to be a standalone, sustainable program. So it depends on how you look at it. You can say we've lost money every year, substantial money, I'd like to point out, or you can say, well, we've invested money into that. But the bottom line is, if we are to move to get that Chapter 70 money, we know from what we're being told, because we've had the DESE run several iterations of our numbers, we know that we will probably receive slightly more than we're receiving right now in tuition. So it makes sense for us to ultimately get there. Our problem is there's a gap here. I call it a gap here. I'm sure there's another fancier name than that. but the year when you don't get any money from the state and you don't get any tuition money. And for us to get through that first year, it will be around that $600,000 mark. So somehow we have to figure out where we're getting 600,000. So if people think we can just turn around in 1 year and say next year we can offer, it's not possible. It's not fiscally possible for us to do that. So the school committee had asked that we lay out a plan, which we did. I'm not thinking that they are going to accept it, but what we said is we know that we can't do it in 19 to 20, that's next budget year. We can't do it for 2021. Hopefully, we could try to do it for 21, 22, and or 22, 23. So we're basically a 3 to 4 year out process. As the school committee has not yet made a decision on what that time frame would look like. So again, it would be foolish for me to even project what that might look like. But what we are looking at is setting up another stabilization fund so that that money that is earmarked can be right there and held right there so that everybody knows that's for that free full day K. So that's where that stands. The other big thing, of course, to bring forward is the SOI. So that for the high school. So last year, the school district, put forward a statement of interest for either major renovation or modernization and or a new, whatever works, or a new building for that, the high school. In talking to MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, they've told us that even once we get queued up, we could be 5 to 8 years out. So we haven't been queued up yet, so know that your time, again, even if we get queued up this year, we won't be digging next year, is the bottom line. There's still quite a lengthy process. I think one of the things that we took a lot of pride in was the fact that the SOI was very strong. They told us that. They came out and did a full-scale review of the high school. They sent a team out, and they did a great lengthy tour. Every part of that building was toured by the team of people that they sent out. So when they called us in December to say that we had not been queued up, they said your SOI was strong enough, all you need to do is change the dates, change the signature, and resubmit it if you want to resubmit. The school committee took the vote to do a resubmission, and that has now since been resubmitted. We won't hear anything now until next December. And so even if we get queued up, there'll be a time period there for a feasibility study and everything else that goes. So you can see that there's quite a process here.
May I ask a question about that?
Sure.
I remember from a few years ago, and my memory may be faulty, a study by NESDEC of Nashoba's projected population even at build-out. And my memory, which again could be faulty, was that even at build-out, it increased until around now or maybe next year or the year after, and then it started it leveled and maybe even started to decline through the 2020s. So my question is my memory faulty, or what is the motivation for the new school? Is it structural?
Yes.
Can you
Primarily.
elaborate?
Yes, happy to. I mean, there are things there that we can't fix. We do our best to do whatever we can, but they're recurring issues. We have for example, like the locker room downstairs where the kids change, that draws in stale air from the gymnasium to put in there. So there's no fresh air that will ever come into that area. So you can imagine the high school teams that are in there changing the smell. It's it hits you when you walk even close to the stairwell of where that location is. We have one area, well, actually 2 areas, where we have regular sewage backups that we continue to try to fix, but they're beyond those Band-Aid fixes. And I think, when you see things like the leach field and the oil tank, the leach field's a bit of an anomaly, but the oil tank is a perfect example of large things starting to break and go wrong, and they're not $5,000 or $10,000 fixes. And so at some point in time, you look and say, okay, when do we start this process? And I think that's where the school committee found themselves at, saying, when do we start it? And now seems as good a time as any to start the process. Like I say, we've got a whole host of activities, because even once we get the feasibility study done, then we have to see if our communities will support. I mean, there's a lot of work ahead of us.
So the motivation is different than the kids in homerooms in the hallways and library that I heard about a few
Well,
years
it's all
ago.
part of that.
That's but presumably
Yeah.
that will get better as the population levels off or decreases, or not?
I would be cautious with holding a whole lot of faith in those numbers, because, you know, you can always say you're only a golf course away from an increase in population. And or Lancaster, as we're watching Lancaster look at multiple housing developments, you know, and those, and or when I even look at Bolton right now, I mean, when we did the projection for Bolton, even for the next, I wanna say, year to 2 years, we're expecting an influx of 100+ kids that we never had on the radar. Actually, when you take a look at Stow right now, Hale School, I think we took up the last classroom this year. Like, we literally had to make one more classroom. So I would be cautious with those numbers, because I don't know that they're as current and to date as what's really going on. To the point of where the numbers are right now, I think they're plateaued at this moment, but I think as you see them, for example, Hale School start to move through, and or these other kids coming into the Bolton homes that we're anticipating, or any of those Lancasters, I think that number is gonna be very fluid.
Okay. If I could encourage you, if student population is gonna be part of the motivation, and I realize we're at a very early stage, I'd encourage you to update those numbers.
Sure.
Because my memory, which again could be faulty, is that it included build-out. Now, I don't know what they included for build-out.
I don't know either.
And of course, NESDEC is not exactly an anti-education group, so it's a sympathetic. So I would just encourage you,
Mhm.
if that is gonna be part of your rationale, because some of us remember those
Yes.
numbers and have that report somewhere in a pile.
I
And
wouldn't
that will be a
think,
question.
I wouldn't suggest that student population is driving this right now, though. I think the structure
Okay.
is, it's very, very faulty, very faulty. I mean, it just, in so many ways.
ADA compliant, do you know, there are a number of
Yeah.
issues with ADA
Mr.
compliance.
Yes, I remember, I was part of the, I came in late, but I was part of the use task force that, along with Mark Jones and
Yep.
a lot of people that spent a lot of time in it well before I started. And I think that there was detailed examination of deficiencies, that we had a very good chairman of that committee,
Yes.
who's now a Stow selectman, a Bolton selectman. And while we might have disagreed on some of the fine points, I think that the committee, and we have a report here somewhere that we produced and.
You do, I've seen it.
And okay, that was, what, 2 years ago now, I
Mhm.
guess?
A little bit more, I think,
Yeah.
than 2 years.
And I commend, if you're, intellectual curiosity, that will show you some of the specifics well beyond just the ones that Brooke has mentioned.
Okay. Thank you.
So that was just to give you a bit of an update on where that sits right now. So we won't know anything until December of this current year as to whether we're queued up or told to reapply again in another year. It won't surprise me that we don't make application 3 or 4 years before we're queued up.
All right. Citizen Burke, I'm not sure I know what your status is right now. You have any questions?
I'm not part of the discussion.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for asking.
Mr. Wrigley, anything?
Nothing to add, other than reiterating what I've said many times. It's been an unexpected pleasure for me in the last few years since the composition of the school committee changed, and the administration, where they've meant it when they've asked us what could we do to help with regard to the budget each year. And I think if you look at the rate of increase year over year since the composition of the school committee changed and the new administration came in, it shows. They've worked diligently to attempt, and I think more specifically, of the 3 towns in a given year, because it changes some, that they've used as a spot to try to hit would be the town that will have the most difficulty that year making the budget.
Thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate that. And you're absolutely right. This year was Bolton. Last year it was Lancaster, you know. And if I can just speak for a moment, I thank you so much for bringing that up. I don't think that the towns don't drive the budget process, but we're very sensitive, because it wouldn't make any sense for us to bring forward a budget that would fail, and that we'd have to go back at, you know, so, yeah, last year, it was Lancaster that was really having a tough time, and, but, so we tried really hard to help support where we were at with Lancaster. This year, Lancaster's in a stronger position, and Bolton is feeling the pain in a different way, and very different way for Bolton. Your town administrators too, we still try to meet at least once a month, sometimes more than once a month, depending on what's going on. And I have very much appreciated that, and very, very much respect what they bring to the table.
Well, I just want to say thank you. That was a very clear presentation. I would love to have you come in here once or twice a year, if that's doable.
It'd be my pleasure, absolutely.
You know, even more, but I think once or twice a year would be perfect. In the past, when we've had issues with Nashoba, I like your approach in focusing on capital projects, because from my personal perspective, the operating budget is the operating budget. It goes up, it goes down, the assessments change. There's not much we can do about that. We know there's gonna be an operating budget every year. There's hardly, you know, the percentages can be surprises, but it's the capital projects. And when we've run into problems with Nashoba in the past, it's been when in January or February, we get told, by the way, we've got some huge capital project for your warrant in May, and it's the first we've heard about it, but there have been feasibility studies before, and there have been other things, and there's no, we can't understand why this is the first we're hearing about something, but you're giving us a long range, you know, look at the horizon kind of view, which I think is what we need.
Well, thank you, and I think the flip side of that is when we've had projects that we've needed help with immediately, we generally drive right over to see Bill right away and say, you just need to know that this just went wrong, like the, you know, the suppression system and the, you know, with the water issue that we had earlier this year. And we come over right away, and he generally puts us on to Craig Martin right away, who our people connect with. And it's just a really nice, cohesive team. I'm so appreciative of it. We managed to accomplish a lot.
Great. Thank
So
you
thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so much,
for that.
everyone.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
Thank you.
Coming and seeing you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff, thank you. So nice to meet you.
And please
Thanks.
tell Jeff I said hi.
I will, I absolutely will. Don, thank you. Ryan, thanks very much.
Seeing you.
Reflect, Mr. Burke rejoins the meeting. And I believe our next item is the appointment to the Historical Commission of Barbara Clancy. Barbara, do you want to join us? Dot, do you want to? No? You want to stay there? All right.
Why don't you get comfortable? Good to see you.
I think I've seen you around the lake for a while.
Yeah, frequently, yeah. And
I don't know what that says, if she doesn't want to sit with you, but.
I think she has spoken in writing.
Yes. So, Barbara, you are applying for a vacancy on our Historical Commission, and I just want to say, first of all, thank you for stepping forward. It is a commission that and others would sometimes have difficulty filling vacancies on, and we very much appreciate you stepping forward. Why don't you tell us something about your interest and why you're applying for this position?
well, I've been an associate member, I was gonna say, 2016, I can't even remember what I put in the letter, but for a couple of years now. And I've enjoyed working with the group. It's a nice way to learn more about the town. We've lived here for 25 years on Barton Road. We have a somewhat historic house. So it's been fun learning about the neighborhood, Lake Boone history. Before we lived in Stow, we lived in Waltham for many years, and there's a very similar neighborhood in Waltham to Lake Boone around Hardy Pond. And the one thing that I've sort of gotten, that sort of impressed me over the years is watching my kids grow up, is that we're constantly getting more history. So being involved with the latest historic home inventory, it was nice to see like the mid-century modern houses getting included in that. And I feel like the stewardship is kind of ongoing now, as we're looking back, and the town, sort of the history of the town going from a rural community to suburb, there's a lot of things that we need to recover or, you know. Preserve, yeah, in that. So it'll be, looking forward to working with the Historical Society. We've done a lot of really nice programs at the West School and really impressed with, the programming that they do in general. So facilitating that, and helping with that too is important, you know, letting those West School programs continue.
I think I saw the Historical Society has a program coming up, I don't think I put you on the spot, at the Wildlife Refuge.
Yeah, I think it's the 31st. So
Uh,
it's the end of March.
It's the end of March, and they've given this presentation before, and I missed it, but I heard it was terrific.
It was really good.
It's about the massive changes that,
Mhm.
that happened there, all the immediate takings of land
Right.
to make it a artillery depot around 1942, when we first
Yeah.
went to World War II.
And they had, people that had lost their family farms, you know, that
Right.
were kids.
They're given 30 days to be out.
30 days,
Yeah.
and,
10 cents on
the
and they
dollar.
just willingly picked up and moved out, and that's, you
Well, I mean, there was
didn't have much choice.
trying to win the war, but,
Right.
yeah, but they still felt the loss kind
Right.
of keenly, so.
Right, so, I think I'm convinced, speaking as one member.
Chairman,
so-
it's been my pleasure to know and work with Barbara. She corrected me only slightly. I think very soon after you came here, you became involved with the Lake Association and its efforts. And that we sometimes forget that the name of the association is actually the Lakeland Improvement Association, is the way it's incorporated. Barbara has been extremely active in that community, helping to write grants for, that we got for installation of catch basins to help improve water quality through runoff, and she's been instrumental in all sorts of efforts to get the word out, newsletters, our annual meetings, and she's been a very active part of our community in that little corner of it. So I look forward to her bringing her energies to the town in general.
Excellent.
It'll be a definite asset.
And you have the recommendation of the Historical Commission,
Yes.
and Mr. Burke.
On the recommendation of the Historical Commission and with the strong support of Clerk Hawks, I move to appoint Barbara Clancy as a member of the Historical Commission for the remainder of a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2020. Thank you for stepping up.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to appoint Barbara Clancy as where's the term? Thank you. The remainder of the 3-year term ending on June 30th, 2020. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is unanimous. Barbara, thank you so much.
You'll
Thanks for
be getting a
continuing
letter, and then
involved.
you get sworn at by the town clerk, and you're away you
Yes,
go.
please don't forget to get sworn in.
Thank you, thanks again.
Thank you, Don. Bill. All right, and now one of our annual tasks is to consider deficit spending for the snow and ice count. I do believe we're taking this up for the first time this year, rather late in the season. Good sign. Mr. Ridley, do you want to explain for those playing at home why we do this?
Annually, we overspend our snow and ice. In part, it's a structural budget occurrence because
You're allowed to.
you're allowed to statutorily, but equally as important from my perspective is it's almost impossible to peg what a winter is going to provide you. And the difficulty is if you leave too little but enough, as we do, I think you can control somewhat the expenses. If you continually simply, hard cases make bad laws, you know, if you raise it too high, you're gonna, there's a human, you know, condition as it is. It's like overtime money. I'm a firm believer in trying to control it. To do that, I'd rather be a little tight than the other way around. But this year, it's been, in recent memory, I don't recall making it to March before we've had to ask for it. And it was this last storm that would have brought us over. There was a few dollars left when I wrote this, and don't have the number now, but the storm that came a few days ago. In any event, the amount that we're over is, comparatively speaking, less than historically we've been experiencing. And we do one of two things with it each year. We're able to, year-end, unexpended balances, the accountant can buy down or completely buy off the deficit, or you put it on the tax recap the following year.
So-
Up to permissible approaches to it.
So if we don't find I used to know this when I was on the finance committee, if we don't find unexpended balances, it gets added to the tax levy of the following year.
Right, it just
Because this
becomes
one's already set.
going in at the tax recap, they
Right.
just add that to a reserve that has to be paid.
If I recall correctly, it's very minuscule this year. I mean, it's under 1,000 or something.
Well, it was only, so at this moment, I mean, when I wrote my items report, we were only $400 and something over, but what
Oh,
hasn't been
the
added
last
up
one,
is the
yeah,
small,
yeah.
the last, was it Sunday?
Yep.
Yeah.
But in any event, generally it's in February or even January, and we're already over. So, obviously, we could have
Yeah.
occurrences in the
And
next
we're
month.
not voting a specific amount, obviously.
just the-
Right.
And now, when the Municipal Modernization Act, 2016, prior to that, it had to be both the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom. Now it's just you folks, so they
Oh, I
need
didn't
to.
realize that, okay.
So with your vote, the deficit spending goes.
Okay. Questions from the board? Seeing none, is there a
Mr.
motion?
Chairman, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 31D, I move to allow deficit spending for the fiscal year 2019 snow and ice account.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to allow deficit spending for the fiscal year 2019 snow and ice account pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 31D. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that's approved unanimously. Thank you, Bill. Now I think we have your liaison, your town administrator's report.
Yes, the first item was that, so gave you some detail for that piece. And I gave you a heads up with respect to the superintendent's attendance here. And that, I think the significant figure to remember from tonight is 2.99, which is the budget increase that they're looking at. I mean, assessments fluctuate based on student population, but this is the third year in a row where, and this is the lowest in the last 3 years, at 2.99 for
What it
school.
was last year.
4, a little over 4. I mean, it's, as I said, and I'm not exaggerating, this is the best 3-year run in my 27 years. And in many cases in the past, there wasn't even an effort made, you know? I mean, you got, I hate to call it lip service, but you got the words spoken that, see what we can do. You know, they walk the talk. I mean, that's, I hate, you know, those simple terms, but, and they've shown it 3 years in a row. And most importantly, given that they're this, by far the single largest expenditure,
Yeah, 2/3.
to have what we're going to see, based on that 2.99, which is a negligible increase, that is such an advantageous outcome for us. I've never seen anything close to it, let alone approach it. The next piece, I was giving the board a heads up as I continue to develop the FY20 budget. And I think, Jim, at our last meeting, capital projects, we're looking at a large increase, a large number of large, expensive projects. Now, what the capital planning committee in the end recommends, still, we don't know on the merits. What I am doing, as I always do, is what if? And so, taking a couple of the two larger expenses for proposed capital projects, one being the town building HVAC. They just finished design of the HVAC system replacement, upgrade, I think, because it consists of both, some replacement, some upgrade. The plug number early on was 400,000, and as we were made aware a week or so ago by, so that was a pre-design, which is why the difficulty of pre-design cost estimates for any kind of project that requires design. You hate to, you know, you hate to go with that initial estimate, but sometimes that's all you've got. Now, post-design, the engineering firm has estimated around 800,000, so it's doubled. we can't cover that in the operating budget without, you know, significant tax increases or depleting of our stored assets. And when you couple that with the fire truck of $650,000, that's $1.45 million. And as the financial director, it's my position, especially given our debt schedule and some relief that we're going to, it's been several years, it's been going up steadily, and at 2.6, it peaks 2020. But when we retire completely the Hale School, that's a $744,000 annual savings reduction, not savings, just reduction as we retire that debt in our debt schedule. Now net, it's only $220,000 because the MSBA's been paying us $500, but still our debt, our debt schedule doesn't account for that offset. Now in the budget, I account for it, so net overall budget impact, but that debt schedule is gonna go down substantially in '21. And until or unless some large project comes along. So we're fully loaded in '21 on the Minuteman project. And right now, it looks like it's gonna peak 240, little more than the net savings from the retirement of the Hale School, but close. It's not a push, but it's not bad. We're gonna see a significant drop, 700 and something thousand, again, not net because we're losing that revenue source, but still on the debt schedule itself, it's gonna go down 700,000 gross, and then it continues to go down incrementally until or unless we load something big up. So this is an opportune time for us. This won't hit until '21. We won't borrow until '20. So after July 1st, we have no payment until the 21st. We freed up and reduced our debt schedule significantly for that year. And looking at what we've just been told by Nashoba is that we're several years off. And with Minuteman fully loaded, with that portion of our assessment, because out of 9, we've got 9, unlike what will be the impact on our debt schedule with only 3, just take a third, of a major project. But we're not even paying 1/9 necessarily over at Minuteman. It's based on the number of students. So the impact, and it's an educated, informed. I've been talking with the finance director over at Minuteman. It's about 244 when it's fully loaded, and that's not gonna go up because it's level debt. And we're making about 219. Won't see a big impact. So now would be the time for a smaller borrowing. And I had a financial advisor debt it out over 10 or 15 years. The two of them would be voted separately, but combined at 1.45, less than 3%, 168,000 over 10 years, 125 to 30 over 15, because you can debt it for the expected life of whatever you're borrowing for. And I'm not going out 20 or 25, 10 or 15 though. You plug that in, we're still gonna see, unless something pops up unexpectedly, a noticeable reduction in our third largest annual expenditure, which is our debt service. So the alternative is, well, if they're not approved on the merits, it doesn't go. I myself, I live with the improvements that are necessary here. Many of us adjust the heating in the winter by adjusting a ball valve on the bottom. That's what we've got. I've been doing that for 3 years. Okay. Inefficient, cost ineffective because of that. I mean, the heat, we're either freezing or we've got it 95 degrees with the window open. This system needs to be upgraded and replaced. The fire truck, that's something I think that I don't have an experience with myself. I have my own thoughts, but the capital planning committee will decide. But if on the merits neither of them go, then we don't have to worry about how we fund projects we're not supporting. If they're supported, I'm arguing strongly for debt exclusion, 2 debt exclusion questions for these 2 projects, because now's the time. will buy several years, because whatever comes up for an infrastructure project or a building project that people are contemplating, we're gonna get a few good years before that's impacted.
Don?
I should know this, are we fully loaded on the community center now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so the only one we're waiting on
Town hall.
is Minuteman, and that, I've gotten a commitment, it's 2021. And right now at 159, going to 244 in 2 years, it's not a shock. It's not going to put us in a place where I've got to tag the number early in the year and say, okay, I got to worry about it.
We're looking at anticipating costs for the town hall, and something is likely to come up in the next couple of years in the library.
So, as the town hall, my position is, when we get to that point, that can be, I believe, completely funded from community preservation funds.
Seems like it.
And I'd be advocating for that unless it was gonna put them in a bind. They've accrued a large number of funds, and, you know, when I check their balances, they've been receptive to it, they've funded to date. I don't know what conversations, if any, they've had about the full funding of it, but you would wanna get as much from them as you could, I think, as long as it doesn't reduce their balances in the 3 different areas that they fund. The library, at this point, again, is pre-designed. And if they were going, I don't know if they're going to advocate if they go forward to get state funding or not, but that's similar to what we've got with the MSBA, a waiting list of several years. If they don't,
I don't think they are.
then we're still a couple of years of design development. If it goes forward now for the pre-design, you know, you go through that process, it will be a couple of years. But even that project's not similar to what we've had for the larger ones. It's not over 10 million or approaching even, I don't know, 5 million at the outside maybe, be my own guess based on the earlier numbers a few years ago, time value of money. But that was an ad reno by taking off the scab piece from 72, and it was 3-point-something million back when we first looked at it, so.
Mr. Burke?
I just wanted to ask for clarification of the chair's comments, that they're not going to? What did you mean by that, Mr. Chair?
From the presentation that I heard at capital planning, I don't think and I could be extrapolating a little bit, I don't think they're planning on seeking state funding, because I don't think they think they'll get state funding for this site, in part because of parking restrictions and other things.
That was a concern early on.
Yeah, where state funding seems more likely if you wanted to build brand new somewhere else, a path that they decided not to go down a year or 2 ago. Could be wrong about that. I don't think we expressly talked about state funding, but I definitely got the impression that they were not planning on talking about seeking state funding for this project.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Chair.
So that's my thinking at the moment. You know, every day I'm making adjustments on the budget, but right now, unless something that I'm unaware of at all comes up, or I don't feel I have enough information relative to a budget item that could change, and I don't feel that way right now, that if there's support on the merits for those 2 projects, that's what I'd be recommending, for the reasons I just gave. Because otherwise, those are huge expenses. If you put that within our budget, everything that we've, and the beauty of the time value of money in a way is that, yes, over time, paying back a sum, but the way the inflation rates and such are going, you're getting a better value now, out of 15. It's, you know, what do you want to do? Have a larger monthly payment when you buy a car? It depends on where you are, cash flow, or extend it out so you can afford the monthly payment. In our case, it's a yearly payment. I believe we're in that latter place. So those are my thoughts on borrowing.
Thank you.
So we'll have questions prepared, because you'll have to vote. You've got 35 days to vote prior to when a scheduled election would be, and you take that vote. You know how it works, goes downstairs to the town clerk, the questions,
Right.
both the debt exclusion ballot question, but also Prop 2.5 contingency language for the, and I'll work with Maureen to get those in time. So at your next meeting in 2 weeks, that's when, on the 26th, you could take the vote to approve. And it doesn't mean you have to, and you get it downstairs, hopefully by then, if there's other thoughts by the capital planning committee or the finance committee, to change that, but that's where I am on it. And I've shared that with the others.
Thank you, Bill. Before we get to liaison, can we go back to minutes? We skipped over minutes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I
Mr.
move
Burke.
to accept the meeting minutes of February 19th, 2019 meeting with Chair Salvy's amendments.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to, thank you, to approve the minutes of February 19th with amendments. Further discussion, seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Mr. Chair, I move to accept the meeting minutes of February 26th, 2019 with the chair's written amendments thereto.
First, I'll second it for discussion. I wasn't in attendance at that meeting.
Well, and so you can,
Ruling from the chair, can I vote to approve them even though I wasn't here? We don't normally do that. We normally,
I'm gonna say you're gonna abstain, but not recuse. So that means that you are present and part of the quorum for purposes of determining the quorum. Assuming Mr. Burke and I vote in the positive, then, well, I don't know if we'll have a majority of those present and voting. Yeah, we'll have a majority of those present and voting.
Mr. Chair, if I may point out, and again, I only know Robert's Rules of Order. I don't know the peculiar rules of orders that Charlie once told me applies here. But it is a policy not to vote on meetings in which we haven't attended and to abstain, but it is not a requirement. But I leave that to the conscience and good judgment of my colleague, Mr. Hawk.
So why don't we hold, Maureen, why don't we hold off on February 26th?
Yeah.
Okay, but here are my amendments. There aren't that many on
I'll
that one.
fix those.
So,
clean it up, right?
it's
The
clear
rules
that way.
excessive would have allowed it, but when you brought in conscience, I knew
What am I gonna do? How am I-
I would have quit
How am I
right there
gonna get
myself,
around
you know what I mean?
It's ironic.
Past practice, conscience, I mean, Christ,
It's ironic that someone without a conscience is
Yes, it's reminding us
asking
of
other
that.
people. to use theirs.
Let's do liaison reports really quick, then we have an executive session. Can I start off? Just because I wanted.
As the chair pleases.
My first liaison kind of dovetails with Bill's presentation just on capital planning. We're deep in the process, and, you know, my colleagues really want to keep an eye on that capital budget this year. The operating, you know, this is a year where it looks like the operating budget will be less of a challenge than the capital budget. And I think Bill kind of covered the same ground, but there are a number of big ticket items, or at least medium ticket items on the capital budget that are very difficult to say no to. Lower Village is obviously one, you know, it is what it is, it has to be done. The fire truck is another. The fire chief gave a very good presentation. It is the pumper truck that stands between the pool of water and the trucks with the hoses. And it does not pump out at the rated volumes that it is supposed to pump out. That is a serious problem that has to be addressed. And he says there's no way to rebuild it, and Joe, if anybody would know about that. The assessors, I've said this before, they have software that doesn't talk to the hardware. The software's from 1985. Hard to overlook that. Nashoba has a menu of items for Hale, primarily for Hale and Center. You know, their menu creeps up to above $100,000 fairly quickly. There are, you know, repeater alarm systems that directly affect the safety of children, difficult to say no to that. Water testing equipment alarms, difficult to say no to that. So it is a very challenging year capital-wise. Capital planners gonna be saying no to a lot of stuff, smaller items, but There are big ticket items that make this a special year. Complete Streets met, and we encouraged the highway superintendent to be, if he gets a replenishment of his Chapter 90 money, to talk about what he's gonna use it for, if he's gonna use anything for traffic and safety, like structural changes that would come under Complete Streets jurisdiction, but he actually said he's not going to. He's going to use the replenished Chapter 90 money for the usual things that he would use it for, repaving, tree work, just making our existing infrastructure better. So that was his plan. He did not indicate any major safety changes to any roads. As I've mentioned to my colleagues before, it was in some of the minutes we just approved, I'm participating in some conversations between the Historic Society and Commission on the one hand and the library on the other about historic artifacts in the Whitney Room at the library, that's on the second floor. It's come up as part of the town hall restoration. Just attending kind of as a mediator and just trying to get the parties to talk to each other, and actually they are talking to each other, so that's a good thing. And I'm done.
Okay, I will just note that continuing progress report, the late bloom rules revision that we worked on for a year and a half, I guess. I'm reminded of saying the mountain labored and gave forth a mouse, my grandmother used to say. But they are streamlined, and they have been submitted now to the Board of Selectmen and to the town clerk for inclusion on the warrant, which is necessary because they are part of the police regulations of the town, so they have to be adopted at the annual town meeting. And there are additional steps on this because it needs to be in concert with state regs, so it has to be submitted both to the Attorney General and the Division of Voting Safety for the state, assuming once we get through that phase, but that is in the works. As we sit here now, we're 3 weeks away from the 1st of March, which is the target date to put the board back in the dam, assuming ice is out.
3 weeks away from the 1st of
March.
April.
Wasn't it
Few
March
weeks
1?
away. It's
April
March.
1? Oh, I slipped a card. Okay, stand corrected. Ice will be out before the date. We need to do that. And lastly, I don't need to report on it other than to have it entered into the minutes that at the planning board's, joint boards meeting last week, we had 4 of our members in attendance in discussion of possible golf course development issues. I think we were all there, so I don't need to get into a discussion of them. But I think it should be reflected in our minutes that we attended. That's it.
Mr. Burke.
First, I want to express my personal appreciation, and I'm sure the town's appreciation to the chair for all his hard work liaisoning with those important committees, and also Clerk Hawk's work on Lake Boone. Just to follow up what Mr. Hawk said about the golf course planning board public forum last Tuesday, I agree there's nothing more that needs to be said to this board, but I hope that the town will follow this. It's a development not a construction development, but it's an issue that's developing, and I think the whole town will be interested and should be engaged. I met with Finance Committee last week. Again, they're very engaged, they're very enthusiastic, they're very appreciative of all the access and input that they've been allowed to give. And they met with the school committee to hear, or the school district to meet to hear their presentation last week, but I was up at the golf course meeting for most of that. Council on Aging is this Thursday, and tomorrow is a cemetery committee meeting I hope to make. Thank you.
So, next item is, thank you, Mr. Burke. Next item is going to executive session. Bill, before we do this, do we have to come back to vote these contracts? Do we have to come back into open session? No, okay, so we can go straight to, all right. So a public discussion being detrimental to the town's interests. do I have a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing contract negotiations with non-union personnel and to review executive session minutes?
And to also get an update on litigation.
And an update on litigation.
With those findings by the chair, I move to convene an executive session pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, for the purpose of discussing contract negotiations, update on litigation, and to approve executive session meetings of the contract negotiations with non-union personnel, by the way, and to review and to adjourn thereafter without coming back into open session.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded to convene an executive session for contract negotiations with non-union personnel, review executive session minutes, and update on pending or threatened litigation. This is roll call vote. Mr. Burke?
Aye.
Mr. Hawks?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. We are in executive session.